Governor Shumlin, I noted the conciliatory tone in both your introduction and your opening statement. I made a couple of notes. You mentioned the Unity Tour, which I found inspiring. You said, come to the table. You mentioned the word reasonableness and openness. And on 4 different occasions, you said, come together. My question to you is, how do you do that when the side with whom you disagree has absconded from the state and is essentially a fugitive from responsibility? What table do you sit at when you're not in the same state?
Well, you know, you don't apply the reasonableness plea in the heat of the crisis. You avert the crisis. And I'll just tell you, by way of our experience, under the Republican Governor Jim Douglas, we needed to get roughly $25 million out of our pensions for teachers to balance our budget. And things weren't going so well in those negotiations with the governor. So the Democratic Senate President, myself, and the Democratic Speaker sat down with the union and said, listen, we're going to have to get these savings, and we can do it with you, or we can do it without you, and really we would like to do it with you. And they turned to us and said, we want to do it with you. So my point is, when you're going to work together, when you're going to do what the American people want most desperately from their politicians, and God knows they want it from Washington right now, and so do I, reasonableness, compromise, common sense, you got to start with that foot. You can't ask for it once you've created a crisis.
But there is a concept of mutuality that is inherent or required for that to happen. I know you would agree with me. I also want to say inherent in your comments to me, and in your testimony, frankly, is civility.
Right.
In the last 2 weeks alone, members of this body have been told by a colleague to go to hell, not purgatory, not Sheol, not Hades, not the river Styx, but hell. We have been told that we want to kill women. And my colleague from Virginia just made a reference to a surreptitious phone call that was placed to an elected official. Will you help me and join me in decrying the rhetoric and the tactics that I just laid out?
You know, I think that civility has to be applied to all public officials. And I think that we need to raise the bar collectively. And it applies to Washington, it applies to state governments. Across this country,
Do you think making surreptitious phone calls, pretending to be someone you are not, enhances civility and discourse in this country?
All I can say is I have no disagreement with you that the civility tunnel runs both ways, and we all have a responsibility as public servants, and the American people expect it for us to be civil all the time.
You, in response to Dr. Desjardins, I think, and again, I always allow for the possibility somebody may have been misquoted, collective bargain, the ability to collectively bargain is a basic human right in democracy. What is your authority for that statement? What is your constitutional authority for saying that?
Well, free speech, for starters.
Beyond your ability to say it, where would you point me in the Constitution for support for the underlying notion?
You know, it is my belief as a governor of a state that collective bargaining is a right and something that has served this country with extraordinary progress and distinction. And it's allowed, as I mentioned, families like mine who came from nothing to succeed economically in the best democracy, in the best economy, in the best business climate that anyone could ever design. So all I can say is I see it as a basic right.
Are there exceptions?
We are allowed to organize.
Are there exceptions?
Not that I can think of.
Law enforcement.
I think law enforcement should be able to collectively bargain just like anybody else. And they have in our state, and it's had great results.
In my state of South Carolina, we laid off prosecutors, law enforcement officers, and teachers. We furloughed them for 5 days last year because we have a fiscal crisis like almost every other state. Is that something that you would entertain in your state? Could you ever see furloughing the core functions of government, which all 3 of those categories are? Could you ever see that happening?
We actually did move our courts from a 5-day a week to a 4-day a week. I would not furlough.
Your federal courts or state? Because the federal judges have always been on a 4-day week.
We've noticed our state judges. State Judge.
I see my time is up. Thank you.